Welcome to this new episode of the Teachers of Europe podcast. This is a podcast to support teachers across Europe in addressing common classroom challenges and featuring educators that can inspire others to follow in their footsteps. The podcast has its home on the European School Education Platform, a European Union platform for schools funded by the Erasmus Plus program. My name is Benjamin Hertz, and this time I am again alone as the host of this episode. Last time I was with my colleague Ruther, but now we're back home. I'm up in the north of Europe, Ruther's back in the south. I'm really hoping, though, that we will have another opportunity to host an upcoming episode together. So, if you enjoyed that episode, keep your eyes and ears open for a future episode where we'll be back together. Now, in the episode today, we will talk about a really, really important and fascinating topic. We're going to be talking about how we as teachers can help fight disinformation, how we can work with our students on that. And really guide and help our students make sense of that increasingly large amount of disinformation, misinformation, malinformation that they are exposed online. And I'm sure most of you have experienced this in some form or way where a student actually challenges you in a class with something that they believe to be factually true because they've been exposed to videos, articles, or anything else on their social media. Be that about questioning climate change, vaccines, 9/11, a recent election, electric cars, or a new fitness craze. Pretty much anything is being challenged nowadays, and there are conspiracy theories about most things online. And as you can sort of see from that list, this is a topic that is relevant for anybody, any teacher, and regardless if you're a science teacher, if you're a history teacher, geography, language, sports, any of us are affected by this. And I'm sure most of us have come across this in our day-to-day with working with students. And it is, of course, also our responsibility to help our students deal with this. But it's not just about warning students about fake news. That's simply not enough. We really need to give them the tools to pause, to question, to compare, to verify, and really start thinking themselves when they encounter information, when they encounter media on their social media feed or online in general. And we need to also help them understand the dynamics behind how information is produced, how it spreads, and how it relates to their emotions. And these are very complex and at the same time hugely important topics and skills that our students need to learn. So for us as teachers, that can feel like a huge responsibility, and it is a huge responsibility. But it really isn't a new responsibility because I think the dynamics of examining evidence, weighing arguments, and making thoughtful judgments, that's something that we as teachers have done most of our careers. We hopefully have done that most of our careers in our work with students. I think the key difference is simply that the scale and complexity of the situation has changed. The barrage of mis and disinformation that our students are encountering. And as a result, the urgency of really helping our students with this. But of course, as teachers, we always rise to the challenge that is set to us. So I really look forward to talking today with our guest here on this episode, Emma Abbate, who has definitely risen to this challenge and who can help all of you listening here to also rise to that challenge if you feel a bit overwhelmed. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Emma to this episode. Emma is a teacher from Italy, teacher of Latin, history, and geography. Since I think the 1990s when you started out, but you also have a PhD in history and you do a lot of work at university. So Emma, warm welcome to you. Can you tell us a bit more about the work that you do in this area?
Thank you, Benjamin. Yes, I'm a history and geography teacher and I teach in a high school. So my students are about 15 years old till 18 years old. And yes, it's a long time since I started this job and I'm very passionate. I also collaborate with teachers because I'm a teacher trainer in universities, as you told. And I'm among tons and tons of projects, Erasmus Plus project and so on. So that's why I'm also very interested in media education and strategies and all is around this topic.
Excellent. Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Emma. Let's jump right into it then. And let's start out by distinguishing a bit the terminologies. I've already mentioned misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Can you tell us a bit more about the differences between them and why that is important to distinguish?
It's not an academic distinction. It's not fast. We should be very precise when you use those different terms, and also invite my students in reflecting on the fact that they don't tell the same thing. They mean several different things. Of course, misinformation is when there is a false content that is shared, but the person who shares it doesn't know that is false. For example, I'm a mother. I attend lots of my children chat, parents chats. If a parent put in the chat an information about some health claims that is not true, but he thinks it's true, so it was in a good faith, we say this is a perfect example of misinformation. But disinformation, and this very dangerous, this one, is when people disseminate false content and they know that is false with the intention to gain something, to deceive someone or to cause some kind of harm to somebody. The third one, malinformation, I like it particularly because it's something that usually neglected also at school level, also from my colleagues, also from teachers, but is the trickiest among the three we are just exploring. Why is the trickiest? Because it's underused during the lesson, it's underused also in newspapers, in articles, and in media contents in general. Is when you read a genuine true information, for example, a real photo, a real historical document, but is deployed in a context that is not the original one in order to mislead or to damage someone. This is very important, especially when you teach, because the context is so important. So I want to teach to my students that something can be true, but to be true doesn't mean exactly that is also honest. I mean, there is a difference between the two words. Something can be true, can be genuine, but if you put in a different context in which it was originated or created, you are doing something not good. For example, with artificial intelligence, you can edit a video. If you edit this video and you delete all the contestation, for example, I'm a history teacher, so just an example. If I analyze with my students a Mussolini, the fascist regime dictator, speech from Piazza Venezia in Rome, and in this film, this movie, from this document from Luce Cinematographic Institute, was edited by fascists in order to insert applauses, screams, crowd support, and so on. The speech is true, is genuine, but the reaction of the crowd was transformed, was changed, or so on. So malinformation is something that teachers should reflect on, should reflect with the students, and something that can be a very important topic for lessons, especially in history, but also in other subjects, because it's a transversal, a cross-curricular topic.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Emma, for those very clear explanations and the very clear examples, I think, that you gave, which I think make it very clear, hopefully, to our listeners what we're talking about here. Let's talk a bit about, you mentioned disinformation is particularly dangerous, but also malinformation is, there's also an intent there. So why can these mechanisms be so effective? What are the psychological mechanisms that they exploit? And why is that particular dangerous for the young people that we work with?
For young people. Yes, because disinformation doesn't succeed because it's based on evidence. It's not based on evidence, of course, but succeeds because arrives to youngs and everybody emotional registers. And emotions travel very fast. So when there is a chance to touch someone's emotions, the critical thinking is switched off. I remember I read a sentence from a New York magazine that I translated for my students. The sentence was the title of the article: "Belonging is stronger than facts." This is a very enlightening title for me. What does it mean that belonging is stronger than facts? Means that when you are younger, to belong to the peer group was the most important thing in the world. Was not important the family, was not important the study, was not important anything. Was important, what was not so important as the sensation you belong to a group. In Italian we have a word that is very similar also in English, if I'm not wrong, is gregarious. To be gregarious when you are young is not a bad thing. It's a sort of survival strategy. You want to be like the others. There is nothing strange in this. You want to be not different from the others. And so when disinformation touch this vulnerable, this fragile point of the young people, the fact that they want to be like the others, not different, they want not to be isolated. So this information works and succeeds perfectly, because the young people have a very good grammar of platforms. They are able to create and to create contents. They know how to create them, how to make them very catching, very fascinating. They are very able to use the platforms, but this doesn't mean that are able to use in a rational way the platforms themselves. So they create contents. They are very intelligent, very digital, but sometimes they don't use their skepticism, is the word I think also in English, in order to deploy, to consume the platforms they fill of contents they create. This is my opinion about vulnerability of young people. It's not a question of intelligence, not a question of digital smartness. They are very fluent in all those things, but they are not very able to produce skepticism. And skepticism is fundamental if we want them, we want to make them stronger.
But this is, I think, this is a really important point. But it's also, in a way, a bit of a danger, because, of course, we want to make our students that they have some level of skepticism, but we also don't want to make them cynics, right? And we also don't want to make them paralyzed by that skepticism or by that distrust. How do we get that right? How do we help students identify and respond to these kind of dynamics, but still, avoid them becoming cynical about everything that they see online, or skeptical about everything they see online?
This is the risk, yes. A sort of a spiral of skepticism. So the result could be, okay, I don't trust in anything, because if everything can be false, everything can be not true. So the conclusion, the normal conclusion, is that nothing can be trusted. And so this is actually the disinformation's goal. The fact that you don't believe in anything anymore. But this is not a media literacy outcome. So when I insist with my students, I don't insist with them spot the fake. It's not important spot the fake, because especially now that artificial intelligence has improved so much and so fast that it's impossible. I remember the first times that when we had artificial intelligence recordings, it was very easy to understand that they were made by AI, because there were some details that let you understand that that documents was made by artificial intelligence. Now is a losing game. If the teacher try to teach how to detect what is fake, what is not fake, is a losing game. So my question to your answer is to give the students a sort of pattern to move from the spot the fake to verify the source. That is the identical thing that we do with historical documents. For example, if I study with my students Nazi socialist propaganda before the invasion of Poland during the Second World War, I give my students a sort of vaccine antidote to such kind of historical fake news. And the same can be done with TikTok videos, with social channels, posts, and so on. If you give your students examples of how information can be distorted, can be totally manipulated, you give them also a sort of protection, a sort of barrier, and also a cure for all this disinformation and misinformation and malinformation that is around us.
Can you talk us maybe through the specific dynamics of how you would set up a lesson where you look at a TikTok video, for example, and then how you work with the students on that? Can you give us a concrete example?
I have a list of questions that I usually give to my students that now are a sort of routine for us, especially when we analyze a document, an historical document or historical photos, because I told you I insist a lot about historical sources, attendability, and awareness. I use a strategy that is used from history teachers everywhere. The strategy is called crop it. It's very simple, and I invite my students to concentrate on a special word if I'm speaking about a written document, or a special detail of a photograph or a picture or images that is the historical resource we are studying, and to analyze it through a series of questions. It's a sort of thinking skill routine. We can call it like this. This strategy is a way in a time like the one we live, where everything is fast and all the fastest is rewarded. I ask my students to stop, to reflect, to pay attention to the little details. So it's a way to take time. No tests to think about, no scores, nothing like this. Just take our time to reflect. It's something they are not used to do. I know that I'm telling something very, very rhetorical, but they are used to scroll, not to think.
Yeah. Can I just ask you maybe to go into a little bit more detail there in regards to, do you, for example, get the students to select videos or sources, or do you provide them?
Of course, we have textbooks, but I usually let them free to search. We use Europeana. I know that most of the teachers know what is Europeana, is the hugest digital archive of items, museums, and resources. So they can search for themselves. You also have three-dimensional items that can be seen in each parts, like in reality, like you are there in the museum. Of course, I give them some guidelines. I told you a list of questions. But most of them are the one you find in Bet Internet for Kids website. That
we can put in the show notes a couple of links where colleagues can go and look for further resources. Indeed, yeah. Okay.
Yes. But I let them free because I'm speaking about teenager. I'm speaking about teenager students. So my presence is important. I'm a facilitator, but usually I'm not too much on them when they examine, when they analyze, because also I want to transmit, to convey them an habit much more than a lecture. It's not, my lessons are not lectures in a traditional meaning.
But you were talking now, I think, in the context of your history lessons and looking at Europeana. Is there also an opportunity in your lessons? Do you have moments where you look at contemporary material, like, I don't know, TikTok video about the FIFA World Cup now, or something like this?
Of course. Especially in geography lesson, because geography is very connected to everyday's reality. For example, the wars. We are talking about Gaza, and we talk about the conflict, because geography is around places, but is also around people living in that places. So whenever there is something that happens in the world, There are so many genocides till now that there is no need to go in the past to find them. And so I try to use geography in order to let them think about media information or disinformation about wars, about conflicts, about especially because there are so many political and economic interests around such events, that I want to give my students the defense in order to understand. It's not like when you are a kid and there are goods or vicious ones, and so you are able to choose if to be the sheriff or if you be the thieves. I mean, in this question is very difficult to understand where is evil and where is the good.
And how do you respond to colleagues, your teacher colleagues, who might say, well, actually, this is a minefield. I do not want to get involved. You've given the example of Gaza, and I can imagine there are many teachers, colleagues out there who really try to avoid this because it is a real minefield and they don't feel adequately prepared to engage with the students about a conversation about this. How can we make sure that teachers feel in a position to address these issues without going into the details of the politics that are often
This
involved?
is a big risk because, we have a sort of conduct code to respect, nothing written, but it's something logical you have to observe, especially because we are teachers. So we are, as we say in Latin, supra partes. That means that we should be neutral and diplomatic. And of course we are, but we have also thinking brains. So of course, we have an opinion about everything. But I think that for my colleagues, it's not a problem of lack of skills, because, now I started to teach when I was 25. So it was 1989. 1990. Internet was moving the first steps. But now it's impossible to say that you don't have the skills to know anything about Gaza or about any other conflicts, because you just search the internet, you're an adult, you are responsible, you know how to search the news. I think that for my colleagues, it's much more a question of lack of time. There are so many activities in school that are time consuming. And so sometimes also the best teachers are missing, are in a very huge of time to consider to talk with the students about something. But anyway, in Italy we have also civic education. Is a mandatory cross-curricular subject, and in this subject we are free to deal with to talk with our students about, for example, media literacy strategies, because it's a part of the program, the Ministry of Education, Italian Ministry of Education program, and so we can be together and we can think about a work that is not time consuming but is very useful for students and is also inserted in the program, so is official. Another way could be the Safe Internet Day, if I'm not wrong, is in February. The first Tuesday of February. Now I don't remember when it will be in next year, on 2027. But this is another strategy in order to involve the other colleagues, because, for example, we have the European Commission has given us lots of instruments, for example, to measure our digital competence. If we use the selfie tool. But there are still missing some tools, some surveys, some questionnaires, in order to measure, to give a score to the teachers' knowledge of media literacy strategies. I think that in the future should be very good to have a tool such this, because there are so many initiatives, and starting from the European Safer Internet campaign, for example, to build a campaign with the students to create. I started from very easy things, to create a poster for this day, because it doesn't last one day. It goes on throughout the whole month of February. So dedicate a whole month, for example, February, because of the coincidence of the Safer Internet Day for kids and for children, in order to make a serious implementation of media literacy strategy within a school, not just initiatives that are temporary and die immediately after they are born. And if I can give another suggestion to the teachers, I find very, very useful the resource repository in a big website. Is very useful and very user-friendly to use, especially for teachers, because there is a system of filters. You can look for, there are many, many resources in several languages. So another fear, for example, of my colleagues is that they cannot speak English, because most of them are not English teachers like me. But there are so many, many resources in other languages, Italian, of course, also, that they can use this repository in order to find lesson plans, digital games, for students to talk about media strategies. They can find videos, everything. So they just make a sort of filters research. For example, the age of the students, the language, the kind of resource they want. And I love, for example, educational games. I love that educational games I love the game approach. Yes, the gamified approach, the game-based learning. There are so many, also for children, for very young students. Maybe game in such cases for the youngest ones is the most approachable, most interesting approach they can find. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is excellent. I think this is, the type of thing that probably a lot of teachers are looking for, the advice on where to go for support, where to go for guidance, for resources, etc. And you've pointed to some of the big, indeed, initiatives at European level. Can we continue talking a bit about that, in particular in the context of e-twinning? Do you see a particular role for e-twinning or other types of European school collaboration projects in helping students understand how disinformation works?
Of course, I mean, e-twin as a user, I started to use, I don't remember when, many, many years ago. I have completed several projects in e-twinning. Some of them also were also being awarded. And I have to say that e-twinning is a perfect portal for media educational strategies. Because when students work with their peers on the same topic, they feel very stimulated and motivated. Because they are very curious about the others in other countries. So it's a way to promote this kind of education also for teenagers. In my opinion, the disinformation is not a phenomenon that can be uniform in every place of Europe. It's very important to make comparisons. So if you are working to an e-twinning project on media education strategies with other countries, you can analyze the same event. We were talking about Gaza tragedies, and the same event, according to the country that is analyzing it, can assume different characteristics, different aspects. So my suggestion is to build a project in e-twinning that can be also in the future an Erasmus Plus project, why not, that is well constructed. They have not to be forensic evaluator of news, our students, I mean, but they have to understand how an information can change if it's given in another country. it depends on, of course, the political forces. It depends on the public opinion in that countries. It depends also from the culture that is different. And so also the language, maybe a very introspective studies. I'm talking for students that are 17, 18 years old, but a very introspective studies of the language that is used is very illuminating for the students.
I mean, I think you've given some really concrete pointers in regards to things that can be done, resources that can be consulted, projects, e-twinning project that could be initiated. But if one of the teachers listening here wants to get started tomorrow with their students, what is one maybe simple thing that they could do in any subject, any level, to begin building their students' resistance to disinformation? Is there anything sort of small but powerful that you could pinpoint for that?
Yes, I would start from the pillars, the 3 pillars of better internet for kids. I mean, just researching that website for me has been in the past very, very enlightening. So if they start from those 3 pillars in order to not just mention them, but really applying them, really implement them in their everyday lessons, I should suggest to start from those 3 pillars. Make your school a safe environment for your students by working with them on the platforms directly, and in internet, safer internet for kids. There is also a guide to the apps, so you can start from there. For example, also when you use Google. So Google, many times I ask to my students to Google a word, to Google a topic, but also in using Google, students should be helped and surrounded by a specific lesson on how to use it. And I think also helping students, this the second pillar, to build on their skills and confidence, because it's something that in this chaos, I remember there was when COVID appeared, no? It was a sort of starting point of a fresh start for many of us, teachers and also normal people. And I remember I was teaching, I'm still teaching in a biomedical scientific high school. This basically means that my students studies STEM subjects, especially the focus is on STEM subjects, and most of them go to study medicine at university after the high school. And I remember the big quantity of false information around us. And it was strange because they were studying to become doctors. And I remember there was a total confusion on what we were supposed to do in order to avoid coronavirus, or what we had to do to protect ourselves. I remember something crazy, like, for example, put alcohol on you, smoking is good to not be ill, and other so stupid things that were told. And I remember that in that occasion, when we started the lesson online with them, because after 2 weeks, Italy, was one of the first countries that was affected by the virus after China. And we started from misinformation in order to keep them safe, in order to not be victims of mistakes, of stupid and nonsense information that circulated, a cloud of misinformation that was huge during that period, you remember. And so the second pillar, I ask my colleagues to make internet really a safe place for their students, and we can do for them. And I think that give a say to the students. This is the third pillar that I love, maybe the most important of the 3. That means involve students in debate. I use a debating strategy with them a lot. give them the right to express themselves, organize a debate competition, give some prizes, some awards, not just scores, in order to stimulate their answer, and give them. I also find very good. There is a space in Better Internet for Kids when youths are asked to intervene directly. And I think it's a good idea to give them voice.
Thank you, Emma. I think that's a very powerful message to close with, and something very concrete, right? Make sure to give space for the students in your lessons, give them a voice, give them a meaningful, part of the lesson construction. And that is part of the media literacy journey. That's part of the process of helping prepare our students against disinformation. Maybe a final question for you, though. You've mentioned it's a chaos. We talked about AI making things only more complex, more difficult. Are you hopeful that we can actually, as teachers, help fight this battle against disinformation? Or are you more pessimistic about the future?
I'm not pessimist at all, because I have lived the web revolution. When web started, we were told that I was very young. I was around 18 years old, the same age of my students. And I remember all the pessimistic views of people older than me. You won't find the labor market is dead. You won't find a job. You won't find a position for you. Also, the teacher will vanish. You remember 1984, the George Orwell prediction novel. There was no teachers in 1984 Orwell world. There was a computer. And I'm sure that teacher will never die, and artificial intelligence will never develop such an empathy like teachers have. So I say the same things to my students. It's like when the first cars started to substitute the horses. You remember? Everyone was very scared about the cars. Everyone thought about how many people could be killed by the cars. But now, if I ask you to not use the car and to go working for 3 hours or 4 hours instead of taking your car, you tell me I'm crazy. No? If I ask you to not use web, you tell me I'm crazy. We are using web for this podcast. And we are lucky we have web. Otherwise, I cannot. I should record my voices in a tape and give you by post. And so I think it's there is no point in discussing if artificial intelligence will be a problem for us, teacher, or for the young people. Of course, it won't be a problem, but it won't be a problem till you will be able to use it, to deploy it for yourself, to improve yourself. Of course, for example, English is not my first language. I'm Italian mother tongue. And I use every day artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence doesn't substitute what we think. It just let us saving time. The most precious thing we have is time. So if artificial intelligence helps us to save time, also in my work as a teacher, I'm only grateful to artificial intelligence. It's not my enemy, it's my ally.
Excellent. Well, let's close then with that very positive and optimistic message for all our listeners. Thank you very much, Emma, for helping us understand this topic better and to give some pointers for some very concrete things that we can do with our students, and especially also for the pointers to the resources. You've pointed to the Better Internet for Kids portal. So if you're listening and you're not familiar with that portal, with that platform yet, make sure to check it out. We'll also make sure to include relevant links in the show notes. So thanks again, Emma, and thanks to all our listeners here today. Make sure to also check out all the different resources you will find on the European School Education Platform. We only very recently published an online tutorial. It's like 30 minutes of a bit of interactive learning that you can, which focuses on critical thinking and disinformation. So make sure to check that out. Really useful resource. And there's also plenty of other courses on the topic and articles, etc. So we're going to take a bit of a summer break, but we'll be back after the summer with some new episodes. So thanks again for everybody listening, and see you in one of the next episodes.